Welcome to my Best 11 podcast. Today, we are joined by a forward who, despite being from South East London, actually ended up playing and coming through the ranks and spent a lot of time north of the river in places like QPR, Chelsea, also played for Gillingham, Bournemouth. A lot of you fans out there will definitely know him from his Newcastle days as well, and spent a small amount of time back down in South East London at Charlton right at the end of the career. Today, we're joined by Gavin Peacock. How are you, Gavin?
Very good, thanks. Great to be with you guys.
Awesome. Marvin, how do you know Gavin? Do you know, I know he's that side of the, I suppose a lot of our listeners are from the UK, that side of the pond, but do you know him well? Did you play against him much?
Listen, I think it's just a mutual respect thing. You know, you see different players throughout your career. And I mean, I played against Gavin on numerous occasions. I mean, you mentioned a striker forward. Forgive me if I'm wrong, using like a midfielder to start off with, Gavin, and attacking midfielder. And it's a case where, I mean, he's very, very well liked in the game. I mean, I've played against him, and I'm sure might have mistimed a tackle or two against him, but not even a single one complaint from the guy. I mean, he just top draw, like not even a word. And so, should I say sorry? Or, I mean, he's not said nothing to me. So I was thinking, I don't know. So, no, a really top fella in the game.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. But I was just looking at on your Twitter feed the other day again. You cleared a ball off the line when Newcastle played Luton.
Yeah.
And I dropped a shoulder past one player. I thought this is in. And from nowhere, you came back. And I don't know how you cleared that off the line. But it was probably the best I've seen. And that was when I was at Newcastle and we ran away with the league that year and got into the Premiership. But I just watched that and thought, God, did he get there? So decent play yourself.
I remember the game because it was like it's 0-0, wasn't it? And that was like, I mean, I remember the actual. I mean, it's weird to be as old as we are, and I can literally remember the whole thing. And you saw like peaky. It was you dropped the shoulder, and you saw like cut on the inside. And I'm just thinking, I just got to run back. And like you said, as the ball's going in, and I've sort of like ran, and I don't know how. Yeah, it's instincts, I suppose.
Yeah, and something you mentioned just then, I find quite interesting, Marv. Is there, and you obviously asked this as well, Gavin, is there a perception of players that obviously, if a player doesn't bite back, you go in there potentially trying to get a rise out of the player, especially in the first couple of minutes, you want to put a mark on them. Some players like doing that. If a player is totally opposite, does not bite, is nice, oh, thank you, does it kind of psych you out the other way and kind of make you think, hang on?
I mean, I'll answer that question, but I mean, I would never go in to try and like.
I don't mean to hurt somebody, but just to make sure I'm here. This is a game.
Yeah. If I like mistimed a tackle or anything like that, I wouldn't say sorry because I just think I didn't want that maybe him to think that I was a bit of a softie and he could take chances with me. But I would always try and play fair. But like, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Gavin. I mean, maybe you can answer that next bit, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get some players, defenders or even midfielders that they'll psychologically they want to leave a mark on you early, or their opposing player to say, hey, you're in a battle here, you know, so they leave a little bit on you, as we would call it, without necessarily, being dangerous. Some players will just not be rattled by that and just carry on. Others, it can spur on. So like if you did that to my teammate, Dennis Wise, that would actually make him play better against you, because he's going to get his anger going, but his anger would work for him to actually play better. Same with somebody like Roy Keane. Yeah. So it's different. It's just different characters. For myself, if I was being kicked and being a creative player, I'd be probably the one that people would be trying to stop more. I would respond in a way that would make me just play better in terms of I'll show you by the way that I'm playing rather than actually getting angry or anything like that. I didn't sort of react in that way. I just kept calm and that would rattle defenders or anyone who was playing against me. It was like, well, I can't get to him,
Yeah.
The worst thing is if you did get hit and then you go into your shell and then you're not. Yeah, that's what the opposing.
It's done its job.
Yeah, and they've done your job on you. Yeah.
Well, we're here to talk about your career. And and your best 11 players.
Yep.
So obviously we go, those people that haven't listened to the podcast before, we'll go through Gavin's best 11 players he's ever set foot on a pitch with. There are no limits on players from certain teams, ages, eras, or anything. And it's totally open to Gavin how he's interpreted his best 11. We spoke briefly off air right before this. It doesn't have to be your greatest kind of like the iconic players. It could be the ones that meant the most to you in a dressing room. So it's all down to Gavin. So how hard did you find this? Was it a nice trip down memory lane also?
It was, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It didn't take me too long. There was a couple of decisions I had to make on one or two players. My system that I played has actually accommodated the best players, I think, to get in there. It's not got the greatest balance, but I'll explain to you how it could probably work, because some of the players in there are so good that they would just be intelligent enough to fill in.
Let's jump straight in then. Let's jump straight in. So what formation have you gone for?
I've gone, obviously, a goalkeeper, and then I've just gone a 3-4-3. So I've just got 3 at the back in front of the goalkeeper.
Very Barcelona.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we'll say.
Yeah.
So we've gone. So we'll start off obviously with goalkeeper. A lot of our listeners like to try and guess when they're on the tube or on driving or whatever they're doing or running. So give us a couple of clues to see if myself, Marv, and the listeners can guess it before we jump in. And then obviously afterwards, honourable mentions.
Right. So this goalkeeper, everyone will know, one of the best in the game. I played with him in my early days as a young professional at QPR.
Did he also play for Leeds?
Oh, that's a good question. Before QPR, don't think so.
That's a really curveball club. I think it is.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
Does he have a ponytail? Is he well known for a ponytail?
Yeah.
Yes.
David Seaman.
David Seaman. Yeah.
Did he play for Leeds as well, Andrew? You know.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but between QPR and Arsenal, didn't he?
Oh, okay. Yeah, forgot that.
And then didn't he? Hang on, am my memory fading? Did he play for Man City at the end of his career?
I think he did.
Really randomly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're talking about the man.
David Seaman.
Seaman. Yeah. Lovely fella.
Was he big? Was he a big guy?
Big guy. Really nice man, but great goalkeeper. And obviously, he was Jim Smith would have bought him at QPR then. One of the great managers in the game, Jim Smith, who gave me my first team debut. And he improved, obviously, when he came to QPR and onwards from there. And yeah, he's just one of the best goalkeepers of that era, I would say.
Did he come through about the same time as you?
A little bit older than me, Dave. And I left to go to Gillingham a little bit after he came. But he's one of those guys that in the dressing room, really laid back, always up for a laugh, loved his fishing. One of those sort of guys you talk about getting players riled up, couldn't be riled up, just very calm. And of course, Birmingham, he was at before QPR. And Jim got Former Birmingham player Mark Dennis in as well, but Seaman was one of his best buys, obviously.
Going back to what you just said there, Gavin, about in your early days and then going to Gillingham, was a good manager there who you knew quite well. I think that why the reason that going there. But you similar to myself, it was Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, Division 4 back then, and QPR Division 1.
Yep.
Your father's team and Division 3 Gillingham, was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that come about? I mean, that.
Yeah. Well, I brought up in a footballing family. Dad Keith played for Charlton for 17 years. So I just followed in my dad's footsteps. I was an English schoolboy at age 15, had the choice of really any club in the country to sign for at that point. And I chose QPR because they were a top flight team, obviously not as big as Arsenal or Tottenham who wanted to sign me, but they had Terry Venables as manager. They had the plastic pitch, which was first plastic pitch at top level in those days. And they were bringing young players through. So I ended up signing for QPR, came through, got into the first team after 2 years or so. Jim Smith gave me my debut. And I was in England under-19 international then as well. So everything was going really well. But back in those days, only 2 subs. I was in and out the team a little bit. Probably a little bit of impatience of youth from my side. And also, I wanted to play a bit more central in an attacking midfield role from the middle. And they were playing me a lot out wide. At the time, my father was manager of Gillingham Football Club, and they were really doing well in the old third division. And he'd brought players like Steve Bruce, went on to play for Manchester United, Tony Cascarino, Nicky Adams, who went on to play for Leeds. He brought some really good players through there. And I was living at home at the time, and we came down for breakfast one morning. He was about to go off to Gillingham, and I was about to get on the train to go into QPR. And he looked across the breakfast table. He said, "Tell you what," he said, "I've got some injury problems in midfield." He said, I need a midfielder." He said, "I think I could find the solution in you. Do you fancy coming on loan?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad." Well, of course, my dad knew Jim Smith from being in the game. He calls up Jim and said, "Could you let Gavin come on loan?" I went for a month, loved playing regular first team football rather than in and out and reserves and all of this. And I took a gamble because I had a 3-year contract at QPR. I took a gamble to leave to play a lot of games, establish myself in the middle of midfield with the view of coming back up. So I ended up going and playing for my dad for a while there. And I think we handled it okay. You got to be wise. I think you've got to be one of the best players of the team if you're playing for your father. And your father's got to handle it well. And like he said, I won't overpraise you at all. In fact, I'll underpraise you because anything I say...
I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah. But we could talk frankly after the game or at home. So I think we handled it all right. And my dad was a great manager to play for, and he should have been managing at a higher level, I think.
That's great to hear that. I mean, what age was he then, Gavin?
I was just turned 19, only just.
I know. Again, I'm not. We had this question before, Andrew. I'm not sure if that would happen now. A player in the English Premier League dropping down 2 divisions, backing himself, thinking as a 19-year-old, thinking that he might be able to come back. Not trying to be disrespectful to too many of them. The amount of money they get now is a little bit difficult, I think, to put themselves in that.
I think they're also. Is there a lot more? A bigger variety of options. Going to Germany, going to Italy, whereas back then there wasn't as much of a opportunity to go and play for a lower half Bundesliga or Serie A team.
100%. And you don't forget as well, you didn't have all the agents involved then. There's so much agent work going on, and that's then globalized the whole thing and the movement of players. And of course there was by then the Bosman ruling hadn't even come out, I think. So that was in the 90s. So all of that then sort of accelerated this freedom of movement.
Your mum was almost the agent over the breakfast table.
yeah, exactly. She loved it because then she wasn't split going to QPR and Gillingham. All the family could come and support us both.
Perfect. So we got Seaman in goal, and then we're going to a back 3.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to start, if you're doing a sweeper or if you're doing a flat, however you're doing it.
I'm just doing 3. Okay. So one on the right, one on the left, one centre. Do you want to just know one player to start with? Yeah.
Yeah, one player. Yeah, one player. Yeah.
On the right of the 3, Dan Petrescu, play with me at Chelsea. Sorry, I should have given you a clue there. So on the next one, I will.
So you're playing him. That's interesting. I'm really interested. You're playing him as centre back because he was so well known as a bomber, particularly at Chelsea. And I suppose at Sheffield Wednesday, a bomber up and down, almost like a wing back.
He is, but the way that this will work out, he's on the right side, okay, so he can get out from that right side, and when I reveal my midfield to you, it will show how it'll work where he can get forward.
Are you going on the theory of scoring 12, conceding 11?
Oh, totally, yeah. yeah. That was
so Dan Petrescu, was he a good lad in the dressing room? Nice guy.
He was a great footballer. Great footballer. Yeah. Like Glenn Hoddle brought him in, and he comes into the training ground, and he's like you say, a wing back. But we used to do finishing after training. I was always doing my, practicing my finishing. And there'd be me, Mark Hughes, one or two of the other players, and Petrescu, one of the best finishers at the club. Better than some of us. I watched him and Mark Hughes finishing session. Well, he's way better than Mark Hughes finishing. Incredible finisher. And so then when he would get into those clever little areas, he could nick a goal. But a wonderful, skillful player, great in five-a-side, brilliant football brain. And really, like you mentioned, that wing-back role, he came into the Premier League and exemplified it in a way that I think no one had done to that date as well as him. Very intelligent player, and he's gone on to football management in Romania.
Yeah.
What was his English good, Gavin? Or was it like a broken English? His English was good?
No, good English, no problems there. Settled in with the lads. Another good lad. One that would have a laugh with the rest of the team. Interesting, he's gone into management, not a leader type, as you would think. It's interesting, gone to management, but on the field, wasn't really a leader type, but very influential in the team.
All I've got going through my head is what David Pleat said about him, Marv.
What is that?
About the agent.
The agent
was quite forceful about pushing the transfer through to Chelsea, wasn't it, from Sheffield Wednesday?
Yeah.
He was very.
Right.
You talk about agents not really being around. I think David Pleat said he was one of the first big agents that almost like the agent walked through the door and then the player. It was definitely the agent first, which I think David Pleat said. It was quite an interesting dynamic, should I say?
See, talking of agents, I never had an agent. Agents approached me, but I had my dad. And of course, my dad had all those years in the game and been a manager and knew all the managers. So that when, I sat down with, whether it was Jim Smith at QPR or whether it was Kevin Keegan or Glenn Hoddle, my dad had an instant rapport, and they trusted my dad. And I would sit and talk football with the manager, and my dad would sort out the finances with their financial guys. So it worked really well for me. And my dad was a lot cheaper than an agent as well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Cup of tea on the way home at the service station. For the welcome break. Awesome. Yeah. So we've got Dan Petrescu on the right-hand side.
Yes.
Where are we going? Middle or left?
Middle. And I'm not going to give it away this time. Sorry.
That's all right.
Middle. You want a clue here, don't you? Okay.
What's international?
International. Yeah. International player. And I played with this player in my mid-20s.
Did he play for Scotland?
No.
Right, that's one out.
Mid-20s. No,
did he have really long blonde hair?
No.
It's not Barry Venison. It's not Barry Venison. No, I'm thinking I'm going
struggling for hair at time, eh?
Oh, there we go. See, there's a clue.
Was he an international for any of the home nations?
No.
Right. Okay.
You said he was or wasn't struggling for hair?
Oh, he's struggling for hair. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. It wasn't bald, but it wasn't long flowing hair. That's for sure.
He wasn't for any of the home nations. International.
That's what's thrown me.
Oh.
Was it at Chelsea?
Yeah, was it at Chelsea?
Chelsea.
Are you playing a Dutch international in centre back?
Sorry, say again.
Was he Dutch?
No. Not this one.
I couldn't remember if he had long hair at that stage or not.
I'm going to say, is he French?
He's French.
Oh, I didn't realise when he came to the club. I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
then
Andrew?
you might be careful because there's a couple of French defenders, centre backs that played for Chelsea.
I think
One
Lebeuf's
I
too
played
early.
with, the one
I think Frank Lebeuf's too early. Sorry, he played too late. Or was it Leboeuf?
Frank Leboeuf.
That's what I was
When did
thinking.
he sign?
Because of the hair. He said no hair. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
Frank,
got hair.
he would have come in what, 96, I think.
Yeah.
I was still at Chelsea then. Yeah, he didn't have loads of hair.
Yeah.
You know.
Was he part of the Hullet? Was he kind of part of the Hullet revolution then?
Yes, in the Hullet days there.
Yeah.
But good player, like World Cup winner.
Yeah.
And elegant player, could come out from the back with the ball, you know, that kind of defender that was really skillful, and he had a bit of pace as well. Obviously, you know, his career as a World Cup winner with France, you know, 50 caps, and it was well liked. He came from Strasbourg, who I nearly went to. Funny, but he came from Strasbourg to Chelsea, and when I was leaving Chelsea, I ended up going to QPR. Strasbourg were interested in signing me. But anyway, comes from Strasbourg. Another guy, you know, good sense of humor in the dressing room. A little bit more to say on the field. So a little bit more kind of imposing in his character. And very made his mark on the game. You know, you knew Frank was out there, and not just as a defender, but actually as somebody who could create stuff. So he'll play in the middle there with Petrescu on the right side. You got good footballing brain. Both have got a little bit of pace, and you've got some height there with Leboeuf as well for heading that ball out.
Yeah, and
like it.
You're talking about kind of big personalities and things. I noticed towards the kind of the back end of your time at Chelsea, you were captain of Chelsea as well. How was that as a kind of privilege or an honour? I know they're even bigger now, but how was that as a player?
Yeah, I mean, you know, captaining Chelsea, I was over 45 times or something. I captained Chelsea. It was a great honour, great privilege, and I even captained them in the Cup Winners' Cup semi-final. You know, which we did well to get to in Glenn Hoddle's second year. It was terrific. Obviously, Dennis Wise was the club captain. I was vice captain, and when Dennis was suspended or otherwise in trouble, I'd be in there.
No wonder you got 45 times captain in them.
Yeah. Well, what happened is in my second season at Chelsea, Wisey got arrested. It was all in the newspapers for kicking a cab in a black cab.
Right, I remember that.
Window one night, you know, gone out with his girl, and there'd been a bit of disagreement with him and the cab driver, and he just lost his temper. Anyway, it all blew up. He's got put in prison for just a few hours, obviously. But the discipline from Glenn Hoddle was he took captaincy away for a while, and I got on great with Wisey. We'd known each other. When I was back at QPR, Dennis Wise came for trials because he got let go, I think, by Southampton, amazingly. Comes to QPR for trials. QPR don't take him on. Goes to Wimbledon. The rest is history when he makes his mark at Wimbledon. Then he goes to Chelsea. But when I came to Chelsea, we hit it off. Totally different backgrounds, but we would always partner together in training for skill work and such. So I felt a bit awkward that, like, I'm now captain, and why is it? So I had a chat with Wisey. Said, "You got a problem?" He said, "No, no problem at all. This is what the gaffer's decided." And I knew that Wisey would come in, and he would be the captain from then on. But I did captain the side, quite a bit, and remained that kind of vice captain into when I left, really.
Yeah. Did it kind of change your game on the pitch? Did you have to as a creative player, there's always a question mark, creative players being captains. Can they do both? Yeah,
well, I kind of really looked at players like Kevin Keegan, for instance, who was my manager at Newcastle. And I've been captain at Newcastle as well. And he would lead by example. Yeah. And I think that's the way I tried to, is lead by example, especially when you're in the forward positions, because you're flying around here, there, and everywhere. if you're in a defensive position, the game's in front of you, you have a little bit more time to see things. I got more vocal. I was captain at QPR as well. So I think I got more vocal as I grew older. And in my years at QPR, when I was captain, I would maybe direct things a little bit more with my voice on the field. But mainly my idea was set an example to follow and try and turn a game. The other thing about, I think, being a captain is you don't have to always be the best player. I think you've got to be one of the best players, but you've got to be an influencer in some way. You've got to be able to influence the game, either with your voice by, going over and geeing someone up, getting into them to raise their game, or by doing something that can change the momentum in a game. So a good captain, we're losing, or the opposition's got better possession, they'll go and smash a tackle, go on a run. You think of a Patrick Vieira, could change the momentum of a game, tackle, run, play someone in, and suddenly the crowd are up, or they can score a goal or make a goal, which I could do. So I think in that way, that's the way I did my captain in different ways to others that were a bit more vocal.
Yeah, awesome. So we've got Petrescu, LeBeuf, and who is on the other side of the three?
This guy was my first captain. So think of where I started and think of
what was he an international?
He wasn't an international. Yes,
for England.
For England.
Let me guess. Terry Fenwick?
Terry Fenwick, yes.
Oh, Marvin. Yes. You pulled me out of that one.
Yeah.
I was thinking, how could Paul Parker play left back?
Paul Parker could get an honourable mention.
So Terry Fenwick, first captain, influenced your career?
Yeah, Fen. He was a really good player. He was a Terry Venables man, right? So very clever, intelligent, hard as nails, didn't mess about. Fen, he'd nail you and nail people in tackles. He could pass the ball. He could play at fullback as well. But he was at his most influential in the middle at the back as one of the three, if you played wing backs or partnering with, say, big Steve Wicks or Bob Hazel, had the big man next to him. So he can shift into a fullback role, could pass the ball, as I say, intelligent, understood the game. That's why Venables liked it. Like Venables entrusted himself to, Fenwick was Venables' mouthpiece on the field, if you like. So real captain. Now as a leader, so the others I'm thinking, good players, LeBeuf a little bit more, but Fenwick, then out of all of those players I've mentioned so far, that's a leader. And the way you looked to, now obviously I was a young professional, but all the players looked to Terry and they respected him. And he had 20 England caps. People might remember from when Maradona went past him as if he wasn't there in the 1986 World Cup. He wasn't
the only one though.
He wasn't the only one. No. And I think Fen tried to kick him, but he couldn't even kick him. But yeah, a lot of respect I had for him, and my first captain, and would fit well into that team, and adds a little bit there of steel to the back in terms of he would kick a few.
Excellent.
Awesome. So you mentioned then about being your first, obviously being your first captain. Just talk us through. You mentioned briefly that you played for the age groups and you could have signed for anywhere or any club. Did you always want to be a player? Did you always want to follow, not explicitly following your father's footsteps, but is that what you always wanted to do?
Yeah. Oh, you see you remember the old Cine film when we were kids, the old Cine film. Like my dad's got old Cine film, and I'm toddling along at age 2 years old, and someone's throwing a ball, obviously my dad, in front of me, and I'm sort of stumbling onto it. I was brought up around the dressing room at the Valley there at Charlton. Dad was captain, one club man, 17 years, most most appearances of any outfield player in Charlton's history. It's only Sam Bartram, the goalkeeper, that played more than my dad. My dad was the first substitute used in English football as well. On the day that they first used the number 12, 1965, Football League used it, the number 12. My dad was sub that day, and there was an injury. He got on, clocked as first substitute ever used in English football. So, captain, local hero, had that example. He was a great coach. He was a great dad and a great coach. So he never forced me, but always encouraged me to try things, encouraged me to not be afraid to fail. And, you know, encouraged me, I think, in the skills of the game as a kid, being able to control and pass the ball, but also to control myself and my temper and my character. So, you know, you were talking, Marv, about, you know, self-control on the field, not getting riled up. That would be a lot down to when my dad, because he was that kind of player, and then he trained me in that way, so that, you know, and having character and perseverance. So there would have been better players than me even growing up, but I was decent, and he could see that there was potential there, and the character and perseverance and dedication took me on where there was players that might have had more skill that maybe didn't have those character things as well.
No, awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a very short break from Gavin's best 11, and when we come back, we'll hear the midfield and the 3 forward players. So if you want to grab a drink or whatever you need to do, feel free. We'll just I'll chuck an advert in now.
I mentioned it to him on the weekend. I did say that.
How long's this break then?
I said we're done.
Oh, we can do as long as we want. So if you want to, if you got something to do, I'll edit it out.
Do you do the restroom, toilet, or anything?
Oh, no, I'm fine.
Sound like an American restroom. Oh my gosh.
For the bathroom.
So whereabouts are you in Canada? Marv said you were north of the border.
I'm Calgary, Alberta, Western Canada.
Thank you. I was going to say, forgive me for my poor geography.
So you've got Vancouver on the west coast.
Yeah.
There in British Columbia. The next province over is Alberta, and that's where Calgary is. Remember Eddie the Eagle, the Winter Olympics? That was the Calgary Winter Olympics, and I'm a stone's throw from where he was doing those jumps and bits and pieces. I don't know if you can see here. I'll spin you around. You can see my office, my study is like a kind of open mezzanine area, and we look out. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh wow. Wow.
Can you see the mountains in the background there?
Yeah.
That's the Rocky Mountains. So I could be skiing in an hour. It'll take me about 45 minutes to get out to the mountains there.
That's lovely.
Wow. We're perched, it's all that forest land. That's all First Nations land out there. So that's all forest. There's bears in there, and
I was going to say that was going to be my next question to you, Gav. I mean, I couldn't live there for start. I mean, I couldn't walk out there. Bears hanging around. Oh my gosh!
There's bears out there. There's moose, coyotes. We'll often see coyotes. My wife's seen because there's walking paths there. She's seen a couple of grizzlies, and we're on the borders of the city here. So beyond that's First Nations. That's beyond the Calgary city limits. But that's all wild land. And yeah, I'll be. Your wife would walk. She wouldn't walk there on her own, would she? We got dogs. We've got like a big Rhodesian Ridgeback, and but yeah, like they'll come in. I've seen lynxes around here, and like I've got a smaller dog. I wouldn't leave the smaller dog out the back at night for long, even in the back garden, because you never know what's about. The bears don't tend to really come up into the neighborhood, or wolves, for instance, but they'll be in that. I pointed you to that First Nation land. They'll be all like.
There's 2 places I've cut off.
You're such a suburban person, Marv.
Spiders and snakes. Andrew has in his place, and now you got those grizzly bears and stuff. My gosh.
Yeah, I was telling Marv, we took the kids camping, and we're going. The kids were floating down the river, and next thing we hear is just shouting, and there's a 6-foot snake absolutely just pegging it across the river. Yeah. About it must have been about 5-10 foot from my son, just legging it across the thing.
How long have you been out there?
11, 12 years.
And you're staying there for good, you think? Or do you think
is that the same type of response as Mark?
well, no.
I thought you were saying because you're mental, because it's full of snakes and spiders.
No. We've been here 15 years. Well, we've been here 14 years, but
yeah.
But
no, my wife's an Aussie, so with the greatest respect, we can all say this off air because this won't go in the pod, but we're all outside of the UK. But what I see and hear, it just sounds like it's going to pot over there. Right. I feel like I'm so lucky to live here at the moment with what's going on in the UK. Personally, that's just my opinion.
You mean just with the government?
Yeah, just the whole, everything. Just seems like, I speak to my parents all the time. I still got mates over there. It seems like it's a bit of a schmozzle, to be honest. It's probably a nice way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
But we digress.
Yes, let's go back.
But we'd all still definitely go back to watch the football, which is what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
So
60 seconds, Marv?
Yep.
Oh, right, yeah. You could catch me off guard here, I don't know.
Nah, they're straightforward, Gav. Honestly, they're straightforward.
Awesome. Welcome back to the second part of Gavin Peacock's My Best 11. So far, Seaman, Petrescu, Leboeuf, and Fennick. I'm going to hand straight over to Marv before we get into the midfield of Gavin's best 11 for Marvin's 60 seconds. Over to you, Marv.
Okay, golden goal or penalty shootout?
Penalty shootout.
VAR or no VAR?
No VAR.
Bundesliga, La Liga, or Serie A for quality? Which one?
Oh, La Liga.
Favorite other sport?
That's a good question. Golf.
Golf, okay. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Pele or Maradona?
Pele.
Best ground you played at for you?
Obviously Wembley. After that, I'll go Old Trafford.
Okay. Fish and chips, pie and chips, or pasta?
Fish and chips.
And one more, Marvin.
Team. All right. The team you supported as a kid. What's the team?
Charlton Athletic.
Okay, John.
Yeah. I'm going to go back. You mentioned Wembley, and I said to Marv, I'd mention this, that you made me cry. I'm just going to put this out there. Being a Luton fan, I was 10, 1994, semi-final at Wembley, and you tore us another one. You absolutely ripped us to shreds that day. Obviously, that was a number of times you played at Wembley, but have you got, just for Luton fans, in that I think it was a semi-final before you then played United in the final. Yeah. Have you got many memories of that particular day? I spoke to Frank Sinclair when Franks came on, and I mentioned it. And
yeah, I mean, it was one of the best days of my career, personally, and as well for what we achieved. And I'd been on a run in the. So what had happened is, this is Hoddle's first season. We were just before Christmas, bottom of the league. Wow. We went bottom for a little while, and then we went on a run in the league, sort of clawed our way up and started moving up the league. And then, of course, FA Cup hits in the new year, and we go on this FA Cup run. I scored in every round of the FA Cup. And so my confidence was high going into that game. But I played at Wembley, this is the old Wembley, for England schoolboys. But this is my first time as a professional. And they were, I don't know if it's the first year or the second year that they were playing the semi-finals.
Semi-finals, yeah.
Yeah. And but we knew, obviously, David Pleat was manager at Luton, and I had great respect for Pleaty. I thought he was top manager. And they had Scott Oakes and one or two players. I think they were good players. But we going in as favourites. But we knew that, and of course Kerry Dixon as well.
Yeah,
who was ex-Chelsea. And obviously Kerry was an older player then. But
I mentioned the other day actually to Mal Donaghy as well. Was on your bench, I think.
Yeah.
Ex-Luton legend. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So there was some ties there and connections, and just remember what Dennis Wise trying to kind of get everyone calmed down, because Dennis had won the FA Cup with Wimbledon.
Yeah.
So he was one guy that had some experience there and of winning it, the FA Cup and playing at Wembley and such, calming everyone down before. I was a little bit nervous going out there, but as soon as I got my first touch, everything went ice in the veins and calm. And so I remember both goals that I scored very distinctly. A lot. I think Frank Sinclair actually took the free kick for the first one, a long one into the box, flicked on by Tony Cascarino, flicked on by John Spencer, and I just gambled as I saw big Cascarino going up. I know he's going to win it, so I start making my run into the box, and Spenny nicked it on, and I just thought, as it's dropped there, just look at the ball, make good contact, left foot, hit it low, and it's gone in. And then I've scored at Wembley, and I just couldn't believe it. Just the thrill. I've spun away, and the lads are all on me, and 1-0 up, and we're in control. But until you get that second goal, you're not really comfortable. And then second half, long goal kick from Dmitry Karin, our Russian goalkeeper, and flicked on by Cascarino. I played a 1-2 with Spencer, edge of the box, and left foot again, curled it in the corner. And I didn't even think, I just knew I was going to score. It's one of those when you're on a roll, you just know. And that 2-0 up at that point, now we're really in full control. And I almost got a hat trick in that game. I hit a shot from about 25 yards, and Jürgen Sommer was the goalkeeper, who ended up playing with me at QPR, made a great save. And 2-0, obviously we're in the final, and it was just I thought I just couldn't stop scoring important goals. That and Wisey, Dennis Wise and the lads wind me up. You don't do anything for 90 minutes and then you score and get the headlines and all of this. So well, someone's got to do it.
Oh, fantastic. And it's great to hear your perspective of the game, and the fact that obviously I was a kid going to the game, and it meant a lot to Luton fans. And as you said, I think going to Wembley as well, because Luton had missed out Wembley in the FA Cup semis for a number of times, in particularly the late 80s. Hadn't quite got there back in the day when they were at Villa Park or at White Hart Lane or wherever it was. So it's really awesome to hear from your perspective. But we're going to get back to your 11. Where would you like to start from your midfield 4?
Well, we could start on the right. Okay.
Yep. So right, are we looking right winger, right wing back? Give Marvin and I a bit of a clue.
Yeah, this guy could play really anywhere across the midfield. When I played with him, he played primarily on the right side. Not really a winger as such, but a very intelligent player, could get a goal. But then he shifted into the centre and actually had several years in the central midfield where he excelled. That's all I'm giving you at the moment.
Okay, is this player with you at Chelsea? When he was at Chelsea?
No.
Ooh,
Is he at you at Newcastle?
Yes.
Has he got two sons who play football, and one I think might have played in the Wrexham game the other day?
Yes, he has two sons who play football.
Rob Lee.
He, I think by Kevin Keegan's own admission, best pound for pound signing he ever made for Newcastle.
Wow.
And I was involved because Rob was at. I was at Newcastle. Keegan's manager, and this is the team, Marv, that we played against you that night.
Right.
The team that got promoted. We won our first 11 games of that promotion season. But during that opening run, it became known to Kevin Keegan that Rob Lee might be leaving Charlton Athletic. My dad was assistant manager at Charlton. He might have been reserve team manager at Charlton at the time. So I knew about Rob, and I knew what a good player he was. And so I chatted a little bit with my dad, and he sort of encouraged Rob to, because Rob's first team was West Ham. West Ham were in that division with us and our rivals. In fact, we both went up that year. I think Billy Bonds might be manager of West Ham. They wanted Rob Lee, so it would have been a dream for Rob Lee to go to West Ham. But as was the case with Kevin Keegan with so many players, he was so many players' hero, and he was a hero of Rob. And so he comes up for talks with Newcastle, and I'd been encouraging him to sign and all of this. I told Keegan, he's a good player, he'll do really well for us. And he's a London boy, Rob, so it was a big move for him to come up north. Middlesbrough were also interested in him because Lenny Lawrence, the ex-Charlton manager, was at Middlesbrough, and they were in the Premier League. But Keegan told Rob Lee, he said, don't sign for Middlesbrough, sign for us. He says, because we're further south than Middlesbrough, and it'd be closer for you to get back to London. So, and Rob believed him. And so I thought, okay, that's good. That'll help me get back in a half an hour on my way. Of course, Middlesbrough, is further south than Newcastle. But all in all, it's a bit of a joke. But Rob signs for Newcastle, and as soon as he stepped in the building, you knew he was a good player. He was one of those guys, actually, Rob, that didn't used to do a lot in training. He would be quite quiet and drift through sessions, and sometimes in games as well. He would just go quiet for a while, and then it was almost like he was saving himself to make impact. And then he'd pick up the ball, beat someone, make a pass, score a goal. And he got better as each game went on, as he was playing in that promotion-winning team. And of course, then the next season I had left and gone to Chelsea. And of course, then the years came on where they became the entertainers. We were the beginning of the entertainers. Then they became the entertainers. Keegan moved Rob into the centre of midfield. And that is when he ended up playing for England and getting several caps for his country. And he really was, he played a lot of games, about 700 plus games. He could tackle, he could win a header. He had a little bit of extra pace without being blisteringly quick, which I would always say, Rob Lee was a better player than me. He just had a little bit more in all areas. He's just a little bit stronger. He's a little bit taller, just a little bit faster. And he ended up playing for England. And a great lad, I consider Rob a friend today, would still keep in touch with him. So he would fit there on the right side of.
Where do you think his best position is then? I know you put him on the right, so you reckon his best position is centre mid.
Yeah,
but you just you've got a certain number of players you want to put in the team.
Yeah, that's right. Because when you see my centre midfielders, you'll see why I've got to put Rob out there.
So we'll move to the centre then.
Okay. This player was one of the best players in the world.
Is or was?
Was, he says. Was one of the best players in the world.
Was one of the best players in the world.
Did he also become one of your managers?
Not this one.
Okay.
No, actually, yes. Sorry, yes.
He did.
Yes, he did. Sorry, I'm looking at someone else at this point, but yes.
It could be one. I've still got two.
There's two. There's two now.
Yeah, so there's still two.
This is why you confused me for a second.
Okay. I'll go for one of them then. Did one of them manage Swindon before he came to you? Was it before or after?
Hold on here. Are we talking about the one that I've got in mind here?
Yeah, it's the one that you've got in your.
The one I have in mind here.
Yes.
Became a manager. Didn't manage Swindon.
So.
But did become one of our managers.
Yeah. Marvin?
The other one. Huh?
Marvin?
Dutch.
You know who it is.
Yes, Ruud Gullit. Yes.
Ruud Gullit.
Yes.
And of course, he ended up being player manager for Chelsea, and actually was the reason I left Chelsea. And it was a bit sad, really. But Hoddle signed Gullit and Mark Hughes and was it the summer of '95? And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was close season, and then we've just heard he signed Ruud Gullit. And of course, I'd watched that. You know, you talk about Serie A, the Italian football in the '90s. You know, it was the stuff to watch. Of course, Gazza had gone out there, and Paul Ince and different ones.
And you were coming through as a player when the Dutch team was
that ace with the Dutch team and
in the
AC
88
Milan team, which
yeah.
You know, you had Van Basten and Ronald Koeman and Rijkaard and Gullit. And so I'd watched him, and I'd seen him, and then to think that he's coming to us. Now he's about 32 then. So he's past his best, but still, he comes into training, he's got the dreadlocks there, he's 6 foot whatever. The dreadlocks make him look even taller. Incredible physique. He can run, jump, tackle, pass, score a goal, and anything else you want to do. He could hold off 2 men, no problem in training. I'm not talking about 2 strong players, no problem in training, and just hold that ball. And his football brain was at another level. And Hoddle, who by this time now, he started as player manager at Chelsea, but now he's stepped off. Now he's retired from playing. He wants to be manager. He slots Gullit into that kind of sweeper role.
Yeah.
Okay. But Gullit was so good, he's in the Premier League, he's bringing the ball down in the penalty box and dropping his shoulder and nutmegging people, and we're all like, whoa! And then passing the ball to Frank Sinclair in the penalty box, and Frank's like, what? Don't give it me here, just clear it. But he made people better players, right? As they got to know that style, and then of course he was so intelligent, he could come out into midfield with the ball. Well, now you've got Ruud Gullit in midfield, coming onto your midfield or your back four, and then sometimes he would play in midfield, but I think in my final season, I think I scored, or my final 7 goals I worked out that I scored for Chelsea, Ruud made 6 of them, assisted on 6 of those goals. So he did everything right. So if it was right to shoot, he would shoot. If it was right to pass it, he would pass it. He just knew his decision-making was at another level. And so, of course, then with Ruud coming to Chelsea, it brings this focus on us in a different way. He and Mark Hughes are the first players that start around £1 million a year. So that's 20 grand a week. And we had players in the first team that were on 1,500 a week. Yeah. So they blew the wage scale. I mean, there was no one jealous of it because they were that good, the 2 of them. Right. But yeah, and he did everything with style, Ruud. You know, the way he would play and pass the ball. There was one game, I think we played Man United at the Bridge, and my dad was watching, and he said, Gavin said, you and Ruud, you both gave the ball away too much today. He said, but Ruud did it with so much more style than you did. I thought, well, thanks, Dad. And I learned, little things from Ruud, just watching him. So you always have space, you just create space for yourself. And I used to notice that with Hoddle as well, create space. But what they would do is if you were marking them, you would be next to them, and then as soon as you'd look at the ball, they would just move in the opposite direction away. So the next time you looked round, there were 20 meters of space. And then he would teach you different things, like if you're running alongside someone, sprinting after the ball, if you just knock their arm like that, it's not a foul, but you just knock their arm, you're going to knock them out of their stride, because your arms are like your pistons that are driving you forward. Knock someone's arm, and all these little things he learned in the Italian league, little bits and pieces to get you an extra edge. So I learned a lot from playing with Ruud, and I really enjoyed playing with Ruud. In this system, of course, Ruud can slip back into the centre of defence there next to LaBeouf, no problem if needs be. And Fenwick could just slide across to the left, and Petrescu could, more to the right and start getting forward. Rude's good in the air as well. He's got that power in the air. Sadly, when Rude became player manager, he didn't have the player management ability. So he was great as a teammate, but not as a manager. Now, I think there's maybe a little bit of the cultural thing there with the Dutch and whatever, being a little bit more aloof. At the same time, he knew the lads and had got on well with them. And so what would happen, as soon as Hoddle got the England job in the summer of '96, Ken Bates gives Hullet the player manager job at Chelsea. And I come in as having played a lot of games for Chelsea in the first 3 seasons, club captain. And he would put in pre-season, he'd put the team up on the board on the day of the game, and you might be on the bench, you might not even be in the team. And then the next game, you might be in the team. And he wouldn't speak, he wouldn't tell you why or anything. And then I saw that developing, and I went and had a chat with him. I said, Rudy, I'm into my final season of my contract. Obviously, with the Barcelona ruling, I'll be a free transfer. I can see that I'm maybe not going to be in your first 11. Am I in your plans? Because he brought Roberto Di Matteo in midfield as well. Zola comes in at this point. And I said, I'm willing to fight for my place. Love it here at the Bridge. And it's more of a squad game now than it ever was. But if I'm not going to be part of that squad and you're not really talking to me, maybe the club's better getting money for me now than waiting to the end of the season. But, okay, no problem. Never spoke to me again. Put me to train with the reserves. I think one time I trained with the youth team. There was myself, I think, David Rocastle, John Spencer. Rocky Rocastle, a lovely guy and a legend of a player. He'd been treated like that. John Spencer, Scottish international, really good player, good lad. And he was doing it with different players. And it happened after I left as well, because Dennis Wise went and had a chat with him, said, you need to speak to players more. You need to communicate better with players. And then he went to Newcastle, and there was the big problem with Alan Shearer. He took, like Rob Lee, another great lad, great professional. He didn't treat him, I think something with his number or something like that. He didn't treat him great. So it was a shame, because a great world-class player, not a world-class manager. And it was really down to those management skills. But Rude would, was I think World Footballer of the Year 1 year. Has to be one of the best players up there of all time. And it was a great privilege to play with him for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Did you ever experience anybody coming through like that was at Luton, Marv? That was just the man management. They just didn't talk to the players.
I mean, no. I can think of someone. When I was, after I finished playing and I was on the coaching staff, but again, it's not about. Obviously, me to turn around and disrespect.
Yeah, but you think it's something that's quite worrying when. Do you think it's the start of the end when that happens, or?
I think it's tough. Like Gavin is alluded to. When you have a manager who, I guess, great, fantastic player, but to do that sort of thing to all those players, it's just like,
and not learn. Is that a worry?
Yeah.
Not learn, like you said. Wisey went up to speak to him, and then he went to Newcastle and did the same thing again.
Again, I don't know if it's a. Gavin could maybe chip in on this. If it's a culture, there's a few Dutch people who are a little bit in that way inclined, who think or like to see themselves as quite superior. And then I don't know if it's on purpose, but I think just the way they've been brought up sometimes. Very, very, very confident, maybe a little bit borderline arrogant, full of themselves, and that's how they see things.
And I think what you need to do then is you've got to be able to adjust to the different culture that you then come into, and exactly. Like you said, then Andrew, learn. So like if I come to live in the States where you are, well, I've come to Canada, right? I'm now in Canadian territory. I'm the visitor. I've learned different cultural things and ways that, I can't just come and assert my Englishness all the time and expect everyone to kind of toe the line. Or to Australia, And I think that it was fine on the pitch, but when you're dealing with people and players, that then becomes a key. It's a key component as a manager. Maybe it'd have been different if he'd been managing in Holland. But I've got there's no grudge from me. It was just very sad because I would have stayed at Chelsea and I would have been willing to be part of a squad thing there. And if I didn't play, I think the season before I played 55 games. If I'm playing 25 to 30 games, I could have adjusted to that if it had been a little bit different. But maybe Ruud just didn't fancy me. And even then, I'd have rather him just say, look, not my cup of tea.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll move you on. And I ended up moving not long after to QPR and during the next season.
Yeah. So we got Gullit in the middle, who is next to Ruud in the middle.
One of the best players in the world.
I mean, is the other one an Andrew? No,
it's got to be the other one, isn't it? You could play him on the wide, I suppose, but probably not.
Go on. So,
Glenn Hoddle?
Glenn Hoddle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Glenn Hoddle, Ruud, my manager, Glenn Hoddle was the one that bought me at Chelsea. And people ask me, who's the best player you ever played with? And, there's a few already good ones in here, and Pulpit being one of the great. And I still say Glenn Hoddle. The man's brain was at a different level. Even like Pulpit didn't see things that Hoddle saw on the field. When I signed for Chelsea from Newcastle, Kevin Keegan called me up and said, you're leaving one big club to go to another. He said, but you will learn more from playing with Glenn Hoddle in training and match days, he said, than you will anything else. He said he's a genius. And in another era for another national team, like a French national team, he'd have got 100 caps, and Brazilian, whatever. They'd have built a team around him.
He'd have won Ballon d'Or.
Sorry?
He'd have arguably been up there for the Ballon d'Or. He'd have arguably been...
I mean, at his peak, like...
We didn't recognise his skill as English.
Yeah. And think of the pitches like Hoddle was trying to play on, the style he was playing. You look back at some of the clips, some of the goals he scored in mud heaps of pitches. But I mean, you'd be in a keep ball in training. Glenn would have the ball and he'd just do that and drop his shoulder and everyone would go that way. And he had no pace. He wasn't a great tackler. He wasn't great in the air. But he owned the football. And it was as if he had a computer in his mind that he picked up that ball and he could assess all the different options and he would choose the most dangerous and most effective option of a pass. And like a Tom Brady, like a quarterback, he would deliver it with the perfect pace and the perfect spin. So when I went to Chelsea, Hoddle, who again could slot back into that next to LeBeuf if needs be, in my team, played himself as sweeper because he wanted to play this. He was introducing this wing backs and a three at the back with a sweeper, and he played himself as sweeper, and he's been doing that as Swindon, and he picked that ball up, and again he pops into midfield. You got Glenn Hoddle centre midfield. Dennis Wise and I would then just make runs like inside forward position, and I didn't even have to look. That ball would be, I could hear it spinning as it come out my ear like that and just land in my, in front of me with just perfect precision. Glenn was brilliant.
You likened him there to kind of Tom Brady. Was he very much about kind of, I don't mean set pieces, but set plays? Or was he all about just the creativity will take care of itself?
He was,
do you know what I mean?
He was a very progressive thinking manager. He wasn't all about set plays, although we worked on them.
And I'm not talking set pieces. I mean something different. You know what I mean? If I'm standing here, the ball will go there, then that'll go there. This is what's going to happen. Almost predicting the game.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, it's interesting you say that. Yes, to some degree. And the new system. And this is, if we play this way, if I come out here and you go, Dan Petrescu goes out there and, this is the way it will go. But it's interesting you say that, Andrew, because Rob Lee and I, 2 or 3 years ago, I was back in the UK, and we were on the train from London to Newcastle. We were doing a 25-year reunion of the Newcastle team that got promotion. We were talking about Hoddle, and obviously he'd been my manager at Chelsea. He'd been Rob's manager at international level. And we were just talking about his brain as a player, but also as a manager. And he said, Gavin, he was at a different level as a manager, thinking at that international level. It's almost like he went up to that top level and he became even better. He said he would say to us, like we're playing Portugal, he'd say that their midfielder will come out with the ball here. If you move 10 yards further up the field, you will steal it off him. And, if Sheringham makes a run there and Shearer makes a run there, you better slip one of those to him. He said, and it would happen. You'd listen to him, and you'd make that move, because then the player would do that, and you'd steal the ball, and Sheringham move there, and Shearer move there, and you play one of them, and it would happen. So he had that ability to see a game in a prophetic way, played it in a prophetic way, and as a manager, then he taught us a different style of play. He got us to the FA Cup final the first season. He got us into Europe and the semi-final the next season, and then he brought in the Hullets and the Petrescu's and different ones, and we start to play that system in his third season very well, and then he got the England job. But as a player on the field, I still say that best brain, and some of the little moments I can just remember of him playing. Like I scored the winner against Manchester United at Stamford Bridge, and in my first season. And Eric Cantona was playing that day for Man United. He hit the crossbar from the halfway line. And I scored and I got the headlines, but Hoddle was the best player. And I've seen the highlights just recently, some of the stuff he did. And Cantona said in the newspapers the next day, he said, Hoddle was like Mozart in a world full of heavy rockers. In the way that only Cantona could say it poetically. Yeah. And I thought that was brilliant until I realised I was one of the heavy rockers. And, he was, it was like classical music watching Hoddle play at his best.
Fantastic. So we've got Lee, Pulpit, Hoddle, who is on the left.
This player is not the tallest player you've ever seen, and was a good captain.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned him before.
Already
yeah. Andrew, you know?
Dennis Wise, isn't it?
It's Dennis Wise,
yeah.
It's Dennis Wise. Dennis, in some ways, an underrated player. People think, Wimbledon, and he's a tough little, played 21 times for England, played over 600 games. And I think I'm right. After John Terry would have been the most successful captain in Chelsea history. He lifted some trophies for Chelsea, FA Cups, Football League Cups, Charity Shield, UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, Super Cup. So Dennis Wise was a good player, could pass a ball, could nick a goal, though he wasn't renowned as a goal-scoring midfielder. He could steal a goal, very good on set pieces, iron lungs, like run all day, and an iron will. You talk about a captain that could, by personality alone, change the course of a game. Dennis Wise is one of those guys. And he could do it all on eating a full English breakfast on a Saturday morning. That's what we used to have. Amazing, eh? I remember we were at Old Trafford, we're playing Man United, and this is Wise's routine. He would get up, eat a full English, go for the team walk at 11 o'clock. Then when we sit down for our pre-match, he'd have tea and biscuits. And then he'd go out and run forever. That was his fuel.
Kids, if you're listening to this, don't do it.
No.
Actually, I'll say that, but clearly it did work, so maybe you should.
It just his metabolism, right? Some people didn't like him, and opposition didn't like him because he put his foot in, and he was a little bit He'd upset away fans. But Dennis Wise was a really good footballer, and again another international. I mean, all these guys are international players, but he got that captain. And even with Hoddle, Hoddle in his first season, I told you we went bottom just before Christmas. Southampton away, we go bottom, and Hoddle was very encouraging to the players. Come on, we get this system going. You know, it's only a few months in, and we were at Southampton in the dressing room afterwards, and Wisey, who was captain, stood up. He said, "No, Gaffer," he said, "forget that pass, and we'll get going." He said, "We need to get out there and we need to kick a few so-and-sos." Very colourful language, of course, we can't use it on the podcast. He said, "That's what we need to do. We need to get stuck in. We need to start tackling. We need to have a will to win, and then we might be able to play." And the next 3 games we won over that Christmas New Year period. Everton, Newcastle, someone else, and it set us on our way. And
there's a leader,
there's a leader, right? And that changes that. And he's standing up even to the manager there, and deep down the players know he's right, and they respond.
But also not doing it behind the backs, not doing it in a sly way. He's actually no, I'm standing up here. This is my belief. This is what I think. So he's doing it publicly, which again I think is even better. Brave
and out there, and that's Marvel. You know, it's you'd rather have that and get it out there and get it done and dusted in the dressing room. There's something about that's in some ways being a professional footballer. It's tough and it's hard and it's harsh because you know you're laid bare there on the football field. You're laid bare in the dressing room. You have it out with people, and then of course you go into the normal world afterwards, into the office, and that you can't do things in that same way. But there's a sort of an honesty about it that gets it done, gets it sorted. We're at war together, and there's nothing sort of going on behind the back. And that's the way Dennis was as a captain and as a leader. And
I think it makes the same to the point where Andrew means. Like, I mean, him saying that. I mean, if he didn't say that, I mean, a lot of the time it will go down the road where things and whispers get out. Oh, hey, the manager's lost the dressing room. Basically, because people don't say those sort of things out in front of everyone. But because Dennis says that and he's that sort of person, then it also like gets sorted. And like you said, I mean, I've been in dressing rooms where, you know, it gets thrashed out. You know what I mean? People dig. I mean, I don't know if they do it nowadays, but when I was first getting in the team, people were getting dug out, Gav. I mean, and like getting the finger pointing at them. You know what I mean? This is. I mean, God bless him. Let's see. I think I've told the story before. I mean, he goes to Ray Hartford. Listen, he goes, we can't have these kids in the team, and I'm one of them as an 18-year-old. But I respected him because obviously he was treating me like a man, Gavin. So I respected what he was saying. I mean, there was a few of us in the team who took it a little bit more harshly, but you know, he was going, I've got a mortgage to pay for. This is my living. And so, I mean, I could see exactly where it's coming from, but I don't know in today's game if that would go down too well between people.
We're a fragile generation now. Young people are brought up, they can't take criticism. Like when in our day, we were brought up, and you know, if there was a problem, the senior players would shut the dressing room door and they'd sort you out. And you know, verbally, and you know, maybe get a clip around the ear if you were cheeky. But all that to say is, it built in a certain resilience in you, a certain ability to take criticism, maybe to laugh at yourself as well. But it was much better for an honesty amongst the players, and I think actually made us better characters. So Dennis was one of those sort of guys. He's a year older than me, but I liked him a lot, and huge respect for him as a player and as a captain. And you know, in that midfield, you got some
great midfield. It's a great
very
midfield.
You got people who can tackle. You got people who can pass the ball.
So let's see who else you've got then up front. Right? You're playing like the modern day kind of right forward, left forward. Not to say big man, doesn't have to be a big man, but you know what I mean.
These three are so good they can do what they want. But if we want to have some little formation, I'd have one just behind the other two in a sort of a very free role.
So let's start with that one then. Who plays just behind?
Free role. One of the best players in the world. at the time. Okay. Here, this would be probably too easy for you. Not as good as Maradona, but good.
That's. I mean, you really put someone. I mean,
not nearly.
No, it's good. I know it's good. What? Did he play for?
Go on.
I was gonna say. I'm trying. I mean, I got some in my head, but I don't know. Did he play for any of the four nations?
No.
Okay, that's not okay.
Did he play at QPR with you?
No. I've probably thrown you a little bit, but
no, you haven't. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking
one of the best players in the world. Means he must have been an international. Didn't play for four nations.
I might go. Was he Italian?
Yeah.
You know where I am now, Andrew? You know where I'm going, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just wondering which one. I assume it's been mentioned already.
I'm
very brief.
It might help you to know where I'm playing. You know, he's that little bit more free roll behind.
Is he? You've mentioned him very briefly already.
He's been a manager. He's been a manager as well.
In the English. The two I've got.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Zola.
It is, yeah. And why I said the Maradona thing is because he was at Napoli there, and Maradona was, and you know, Maradona was that free kick guy, and of course Zola was that free kick guy. But I mean, he was just for a period there one of the best players in the world. I think Chelsea fans may have voted him best of all time at Chelsea. Yeah. And so he joins in my last period of time at Chelsea, and just a little genius of a player. He comes in again, another player that we've all seen in Serie A, and you know, he comes into the Chelsea training ground. First day of training, we're playing a practice match, and I'm on the opposite side to him. And I thought, you know, again, club captain, I'll just give him a welcome to the club. And I'm not a great tackler, but you know, I'm going to go slide in, and he gets the ball sort of halfway line out wide, and I've got steaming across, just slide in for a tackle, and he's quick feet round me, gone past me, and I'm sliding out of play, and I don't know where, catching a bus somewhere else. And then a little bit later on, there's a free kick given, and Gullit, obviously the player manager, then he's brought him in. He goes over, whispers something in his ear. Obviously, Gullit could speak 7 languages or whatever it is. He's speaking Italian to him, and Kevin Hitchcock, the goalkeeper, lines the wall up. Zola sets it up and whips the ball over the wall into the top corner. Lads are very good. You know, Zola's done it before, but there's a little bit of pressure. First day of training at Chelsea, and you've done that. And then Gullit says something, so he puts the ball down again, and they set the wall up, and he whips it over in the top corner again. And then he does it again, and then he does it again. He did it about 5 times, top corner every time after time. And now the lads are like, well, we've got something special on our hands here. The great thing about Zola was his humility as well as his hard work. Is he would, after that session, he took a bag of balls and went and practiced for another half an hour his free kicks. So he was a likable guy who had this amazing ability to create and score goals, and a humility about him that made him loved by his own fans, but also by opposing fans.
Did he bring anything else to the team? Because I always think that era was definitely kind of like a Zola Bergkamp. The two of them almost, the foreign players came in, they changed along, and Wenger, things like that were changing. The diet, the way you lived, the way you trained, everything kind of started it looked like it was changing from the outside. And obviously you were on the inside, Marv was on the inside. Did it feel like football was starting to change and Zola was definitely an integral part of that?
He was an integral part. But I tell you what, Hoddle began to change things at Chelsea the moment he walked in. Talk about diet. Like our diet at Chelsea after training was tea and biscuits. And there was a biscuit rota. And you were on the biscuit rota and you had to bring in, these biscuits. And there's a lot of pressure on, that Wisey would ring you up if it's your day, like you're on the way to training, like you better have some good biscuits because otherwise you'd be on a double shift. And then we'd sit there and we'd dunk the biscuits in the tea after training. That's how we refueled our bodies. Hoddle comes in, you mentioned Wenger, having been with Wenger at Monaco and learned a lot from him as a manager, and says, no, we're going to get a chef in, we're going to change the diet. We're going to do 1 or 2 afternoon sessions and, all of this, the massage and that. So he begins to change it. And then these players coming in from the continent, they've already got that in their blood. So instead of drinking pints of beer, they'd have a glass of wine. Instead of eating burgers, they have their pasta. So, and the other thing they brought in was a little bit more style in the gear that they wore. So we would all be in our 90s shell suits, tracksuits, and they'd be like, no, a little bit of Armani, a little bit of Hugo, but we're coming to work here. We're dressing for the occasion. And I remember Ruud Gullit. He was having a massage after training one day, and he's sitting there, he's having his massage. As I say, magnificent athlete. The dreadlocks are flowing, and we used to have to walk through the treatment room where you got your massages. To the car park, to get to the car park after training. So there's a few of us have come through and we're in our sort of scruffy tracksuits and jeans and we're trying to get through past Ruud, and Ruud's got his arms behind his head and he looks at us, he says, it has occurred to me, he says, that 60% of English men cannot dress properly. And Frank Sinclair turns around and says, well, I'm the other 20%. And we went, no, Frank, you should be 40%. His maths weren't very good. But that was the thing. They brought that whole professionalism with the not only the way they played on the field and trained, but the way that they ate, the way they looked after their bodies, the way they even dressed their bodies with that attitude of mind. And so then Zola coming in, total professional, genius level on the field. Some of the goals he scored for Chelsea were at another level. And I think with the genius players like Zola, like Hoddle, like Gullit, they do things that even top players haven't seen. So you're watching a game, and you see a Messi, for instance, and like Marv and I, we're professional. You can read a way a game's going to go, and a player gets the ball, you probably think what they're going to do with the ball. And then you think, whoa, I didn't even see that was possible. Right. So the likes of Zola do things you didn't even see as a top professional yourself.
Awesome. So we got Zola, and then who's the front two?
The two up there with him, or just be ahead of him. This one, very, very strong player. Very, very strong player.
Welsh international.
Yeah. Next clue. One of his legs was like two of mine.
Gavin, one of my early games, I played against him when he's at Manchester United. Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah. Strong as an ox. Like, that was the biggest thing for me. I mean, he could head, and he could hold the ball up, but he had, renowned for being a great volleyer as well. But the biggest thing for me was just his strength. I could never get around him.
Oh,
he's tall. He doesn't come across as too tall.
No, and that's the thing as well. I think about him, he's just like he was about 5'10". Mark Hughes, 5'10".
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Mark Hughes.
5'10". But he signed the same day or week as Gullit, and that first day of training, we would have Marv, you remember, we'd do like a keeper where players would be on the outside of the circle and you put two in the middle. Yeah, and they would play against each other, playing off the outside, and you've got to keep it away from your opponent in the middle. You got Gullit against Hughes in the middle. It was like a war. Like the two of them, the strength levels were at a different level. And obviously Gullit bigger, but Hughes was and his legs were enormous. One of the things that people didn't realise is he supported Chelsea as a youngster. So coming to Chelsea he loved it. I really liked Sparky. He was obviously a great player, scorer. I mean, a good goal scoring record, but scorer of great goals. You know, not the great goal scorer in terms of like a 1 in 2 guy. Yeah. Maybe more of a 1 in 3, but scored great goals. And he had the all-round game because he could hold the ball up and he could tackle as well. So like he could run across and nail a defender in a tackle. But I really liked him as a person as well. We'd sit and very quiet. So you see, he was like on the field, he was like a raging bull, you know, with his aggression and that. Off the field, very quiet guy, laid back. And we'd sit on the team coach going to games and chat about life and stuff. And very laid back. And I never thought he would go into being a manager. Never struck me as that kind, just my quiet life type of guy. But as a player, you know, supreme player on the field and served Chelsea well. And I'd have loved to have had longer playing with a Mark Hughes. You know, like for me as an attacking midfielder, making runs off of Mark Hughes would have been a dream in the right system for the right team.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Was that your favourite position?
Yeah,
the kind of attacking midfielder. Do you prefer to play as part of the midfield or just off? You mentioned Zola's playing just off. Is that what you prefer?
Yeah, I could be at the front of a diamond system. So like if I had played a diamond in midfield, like the front, which we played for a little bit at Chelsea, or I could play like Zola's there, but just behind a front two. That would be my favourite position. Ozzy Ardiles, when he joined Newcastle as manager, he was the first to really play me in probably what was my best position there. I think in the old, you know, maybe even some of the systems they play now might suit me better. The old inside forward position would have been great for me. But I could play as one of two if you played a 4-4-2, as long as that guy next to me was a bit more of a defensive player. That would then allow me to break forward and create and get a goal. And, it played to my strengths a little bit more. But
awesome. So you got Hughes, who is the other striker.
Again, you know, one of the best strikers in the world for a time, and a scorer of all types of goals. Because to score all types of goals, right foot, left foot, headers, volleys.
Did you play with him at Newcastle?
No.
Not Andy Cole.
Not Andy Cole.
I was banking on that. International?
Chelsea?
Yeah. Chelsea player?
International.
Scottish?
No. I'll give you another clue if you're struggling.
Irish?
No.
Oh.
You might need another clue.
I modelled my hairstyle and facial beard on him.
No, I'm still.
He wasn't international, yes?
Oh, he was international. Yeah.
Oh, don't say it like that. That makes us sound really stupid that we can't. We definitely
was he? Okay, maybe not yours, but was he also a manager?
Yes, but not mine. You're correct.
But not yours.
I can't think of what the Chelsea players played strikers in that era. Because we mentioned most of them. No, I'm going to need another clue.
You need another clue.
So is Chelsea long hair?
No, I modelled my hair.
Short.
Oh, you mean your hair now? I thought you.
Yeah.
I thought you meant as in when you're playing.
Oh.
No.
Has he unfortunately recently passed away?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't know if the era's crossed over again.
Yeah, my sort of latter period there.
Yes. And he was Chelsea manager, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Right.
I mean, that's where I was going. God bless him.
Yes.
Yeah, Gianluca Vialli.
Yes.
Gianluca Vialli. What a great player. I mean, the career, 60 caps or whatever for Italy. Juventus, Sampdoria. And as I say, like, watch the clips of Vialli's goals with Chelsea, but Juventus, Sampdoria as well, and see the way that he was a very well balanced player, and he could hit with right foot, left foot, headers, angles, volleys, half volleys, just superb. Another very humble man, and someone who came into Chelsea, and obviously he wasn't at his peak that he'd been at, in his Juventus days, but still a remarkably good player, and won a lot of trophies as a player. Won a few as manager, of course, but Serie A, Coppa Italia, UEFA Cup winners, European Cup, stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, recently, wasn't he part of the backroom staff for the Italy Euros?
Yeah, big mates with Mancini, right?
Yes.
So Roberto Mancini, they're time together at Sampdoria, and we played when we were at Chelsea, and Vialli was at Chelsea, and we played a pre-season friendly against Sampdoria, and Mancini was still playing for Sampdoria then. So you got Vialli on our side and Mancini. And during the game, I've gone into a tackle with Mancini, who I loved as a player as well to watch. And he's done me, like, gone over the top of the ball, but high and down, studs, could have broken my leg, studs right down my shin. And another player, as a professional, if someone's gone to do you, and he did. Pre-season friendly, and I wasn't the kind of player that you were talking about reacting to a kick, but I was on the ground. I knew he'd done me, and I just whipped a leg out to kick him. And before I knew it, there's about 5 Sampdoria players all around me, and I was getting knees to the head and punches. And they did me mafia style, right? And then afterwards, we went for this meal, an Italian restaurant afterwards, and of course, Vialli is just treated like royalty, and Hullet too, and we get free meal and all this. And then Mancini walks in because he's big mates with Vialli, and he comes up to me and he says, sorry about the tackle, but they had a good relationship, and Vialli was just just this great player on the field, but a very ordinary person off the field. Like, you could talk to anyone, even with all this greatness. So I remember, he's come to London. This owner of Italian restaurant in London gets hold of me, says, can you get Vialli to come for a meal here, and have a picture done? I can't even remember the name of the restaurant. He said, I'll give you £1,000 for him to come. And I said, well, I'll ask him. Anyway, he agrees to come. My wife, Amanda, came with me that night. We brought my mother-in-law, Mary, who hasn't got a clue about football. And she sits there, and Luca chats to Mary, my mother-in-law, all night long, just about life and different things. And when he recently died, she remembers that. And he's such a nice man. He chatted to me all evening. She didn't really know who he was. And at the end of the evening, the owner gives me his £1,000 to give to Luca, and I say, here you go, Luca, they just give this to you as a thank you for coming. And he just wouldn't. He said, you have that, that's yours. He said, I don't want anything, and it's it was just a pleasure to do it. So that's nice when you just know that there are good guys like that, achieved the very heights, but maintained if you like, a low posture in terms of humility with other people. Zola was like that too. Zola, quick little story on Zola, because you want little stories. he played in my testimonial match for QPR, and I got Chelsea to come down. It was Zola's last game for Chelsea in a Chelsea shirt. I asked him before the game, can I have your shirt, Franco, for my boy, Jake, number 10. And after the game, I've got loads going on with my testimonial, and I thought, he'll forget, he's busy. Anyway, comes out, the kit man's got it, signed to Jake, Gianfranco Zola, silver pen, all this. And just the mark of the man, just still remembered. And took it home and had it about a week, and I saw it in hanging up on the washing line. My wife washed it, and she washed the autograph out. And I said, you've washed the autograph? She, yeah, but it was dirty and sweaty. I said, no, it had Gianfranco Zola's autograph on the last shirt he wore for Chelsea. So my son still got the shirt, but he didn't have the signature, but we've got the memories.
That was the idea of it. It's supposed to have the sweat and Gianfranco Zola's.
Exactly.
Love it. Marvin, over to you. Last two.
Yes, Gavin. So, I mean, I know, and I'm sure there's some people who follow you know a little bit what you're doing now. Just tell us what you've been doing since you've stepped away from the game, sort of thing.
Oh, sure. You don't want a manager, no?
I was thinking manager first.
Oh,
Marvin.
yeah, the manager. Sorry, the manager.
Oh.
The manager. Sorry,
Okay.
the manager.
I had some great managers: Jim Smith, Ozzy Ardiles, Terry Venables, Jerry Francis, and my dad. But I'm going to go for Kevin Keegan. Talk about motivator of men. Kevin came into Newcastle and he just set the place alight. And his pure ability to get players and to bring the best out of each player was at another level, in a way that it didn't have. It didn't have the tactical brain that Hoddle had, but in terms of what he did for Newcastle was another level.
Were you surprised when he I don't want to say snapped, but when he flipped? Were you surprised when you saw that? Did he always have it in him?
Because he was so passionate, and he had that little bit of edge, even in his game. When remember, he was sent off Liverpool, Leeds. He punched Billy Bremner. So he had that in him, Kevin. But I mean, obviously, Fergie was the master at the mind games. But to give you an example of his man management, first game in charge is Bristol City at home at St James's Park. He was packed to the rafters with 5,000 locked out because they just want to see Keegan. He'd been a former player at Newcastle as well. He's come back as manager. He'd been in Marbella for 7 years, retired, playing golf with Sean Connery, his mate. And he comes back and he doesn't really know the second division, which is the tier we were in then. Didn't know the players at the club, but he'd seen a few videos, and he's going around the dressing room before the game. And I see him speaking to people quietly. Lee Clark, David Kelly, gets to me. He said, and I've been scoring goals that season. He says, "You're the man today." He says, "You're the one. 20 goals this year. You're the one." He said, "Bill Shankly used to say to me," obviously Bill Shankly, the great Liverpool manager, a legendary manager of old, who treated Keegan like a son. Bill Shankly said to me, "Just go out there and drop hand grenades all over the field. You're the danger man. You just go out and cause trouble." And I thought, God, Shankly said that to Keegan. And now Keegan's saying that to me. And Keegan's been a hero of mine. I had his poster on my bedroom wall. I just walked out that tunnel. I ran all day. I made 2 goals. And, I think I might have been man of the match. And it's an example of drawing out the best in someone. And I used to say from then on, Keegan is a great motivator of men. And then I remember when he got the England manager's job, first game, I think was Poland at Wembley. Paul Scholes he gets a hat trick in that game, attacking midfielder. Says in the paper, the next day I was reading the paper, he says, "Kevin Keegan's a great motivator of men." And I was thinking, exactly, that's what I've been telling people for years. And then I read on, he said to me before the game, "Bill Shankly used to say to me, just go out there and drop hand grenades all over the field." And I thought I was special, but he obviously knew what to say to certain players to make them tick. And that's why I go for Keegan as my manager.
Awesome.
Honourable mentions for players would be Les Ferdinand, played with him at QPR, Andy Cole, one of the best Premier League strikers, Peter Crouch,
I was
look
going
at
to mention
QPR.
Crouch. Yeah.
yeah, QPR, but look at his record for England as goals for games and his Premier League record. And then maybe a Paul Parker and a Jamie Redknapp. I played with Jamie Redknapp at Bournemouth.
I was going to say, they haven't mentioned much about your Bournemouth time. I know.
Yeah, it was a brief year there. Jamie was just coming through. He was in the first team at 16. But I was there with Harry, as in Harry being a young manager. And yeah, I enjoyed playing for Harry. We were in the old second division then.
Yes. Awesome. So, Marvin, now you can ask a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Gavin, so I mean, can you just speak a little bit about what you've been up to since you've stopped or put the boots away? If you still put the boots away, you might still do a little bit of guest playing here and there or celebrity playing. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so when I retired from playing in 2002, I worked for the BBC and on the television, radio, Match of the Day, Football Focus, all of the big shows there. And loved the media career. I was considering management or media. Media was getting bigger. I thought I'd go that route and see, and it went quite well for me. And I was really enjoying it. I was going to World Cups, doing the World Cups for the BBC, and I would have carried on. But then I left in 2008 to come to Canada to finish my theological studies. I've been a Christian since I was 18, so the whole time of being a footballer, but never really sensed the call to ministry until around about 2006. And then I started doing some studies in England. And then I said to my wife, Amanda, I think I'm going to give it up, the second dream career, to pursue this. And people will think I'm crazy, but I think this is what I need to do. And then I thought about, well, because my profile was quite high then in the UK, because I was on telly all the time. What about coming away to anonymity where no one knows who I am and I can do my studies, and maybe we'll go back after then. And 2008, we knew Canada. We've been coming to Western Canada here for quite a bit. And we came on a 3-year visa. I was on a student visa. We lived off our savings. I couldn't earn money for 3 years. Lived in a small house for a while there, and took our kids, obviously 15 and 12 they were at the time, so difficult ages. And and then we've ended up staying here now. It's 14 years, and I'm one of the pastors in a church here in Calgary Grace Church, and so I'm part of the leadership team of the church, and I do some preaching and teaching and counselling, and it's not a job that gets the headlines, but it's a great privilege to walk with people through the higher points of their lives and the low points of their lives. And obviously I'm teaching, from the Bible, and that's what I do now. And I wrote my autobiography about a year ago, A Greater Glory.
That, yeah. What's it called, sorry?
A Greater Glory.
Fantastic.
From pitch to pulpit. Yeah, the subtitle is From Pitch to Pulpit. And it's a story of my career, obviously a sports biography, but it's more than that. It's a story of life in all of its complexities, set against the backdrop of the beautiful game, but with a little bit of the light of my Christian faith on it. And you don't have to be a Christian to read it, but I think it appeals to a cross section of people. And I talk about lots of these players and the different stories in the book. But there's just more to life than football fame and fortune. There's a greater glory to be had, and I see that in the Bible as knowing Jesus Christ as Lord and Saviour.
So when you were doing do you call it sermons, I suppose? Is that what's So when you're doing your sermons, do they understand, or do you get an opportunity to use much of your past football life? Do they get it?
I could have come anywhere else in the world and they'd really be keen on football, but no, the Canadians aren't too keen. They don't really know too much. I mean, obviously my people know that I was a professional footballer, and there's one or two in the congregation that like football, but it's hockey is the big thing here.
Right.
So was that nice though? You said that's part of the reason why you went out there. Is it still nice today?
Yeah.
They know Gavin rather than Gavin Peacock, if you know what I mean, the player.
Yeah. No, they know me as Pastor Gavin.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, not everyone calls me that, but yeah, they see me as their pastor, as their minister, not as like what I was in England. Now, interestingly, like I'll go back to England maybe 6 weeks a year, and I'm invited back by different churches to do, preaching conferences, and sometimes I'll do pub evenings where Christian guys will invite their mates along that aren't Christians, and I'll do a talk like faith and football talk, and of course in England I've got that little connection with the football to people still, but as the years have passed, obviously I get a little bit more distant from football, and in the church people just see me as coming to as a visiting preacher, and but there is that life I had, and that was given from God too, and I loved it while it lasted, but of course nothing lasts, and yet it's a great vehicle to connect to people through the football, because even if you think of football, you think of the stadium, it's like a place of worship, right? People go, and the focus is on those players. They desire to see something big and beautiful and thrilling to take them outside of themselves. And so they go together, and to do it together and be united in doing it. And obviously the Bible tells us we were made to worship God and to be together in doing that. And there's echoes in the human soul of a desire for glory, which God is the ultimate fulfiller of that. But football is an echo of that. And so you can connect to people, even in those, even in the way that human beings are wired, even in the way they like their sport, to connect them to what they were really made for. And I find that my former career has helped me to do that. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I was preaching yesterday, and now I'm on this podcast with you, and I still enjoy. I tell you what, I do miss a little bit of the chat and the banter, and like
right.
When you get back to England and people, the teams, and even in the church, everyone knows they've got a team. They're all, and so I missed a bit of the humour, but the football that was very much a culture in the UK and is. I do miss that for sure.
But listen, Gavin, I appreciate obviously coming on behalf of Andrew and myself. I mean, fantastic 11, fantastic stories, and like I said, I don't know if you thought it'd be as long. I mean, like I said when I spoke to you, I said it's been great because it's about the guests, it's about you. I mean, I didn't want to keep you away. I was very conscious of your time.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. It's been good chat, and you might have to edit it, I suppose, because it might be too long for you. But I hope give you a few stories with different players as well, which is nice insight, isn't it?
No, it's been fantastic, and I want to say thanks again, as Miles already said. But and that was Gavin Peacock's My Best 11. Awesome.